Thanks.
Go, letting her in.
She's in. Okay, great. So this meeting, the capital program committee was called to order a few minutes ago before we got on, just simply because we're all here. No material discussion was had, and we did approve the agenda. Are there any members of the public?
There is not, Mr. Chair.
So members of the public present, there'll be no public minutes. Can we get a motion to adopt the minutes of November 17th?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously. Oh,
I'm seeing if we don't have any voters on that.
Oh.
No, we don't. That's all airport related.
we've got the airport with us this morning, and then we're just gonna do a preliminary review of Rory's prior to next week's up and down finalization for up and downs. So with that said, we've got from the airport, I see Tom, Noah, and Jamie. Tom, you want to lead us off?
Yes, and I'm assuming we're focusing on the housing, and if there's any other questions on any of the projects, we'd be glad to address those as well, but I just want to bring you up to speed on where we are with the housing. We went back and we engaged the local architect, and they went out and did a cost estimate and came back to us with a number of $12 million, to which we said, stop, we're done. We had a very blunt and open conversation. Our chairman is also with us today, and he directed us to focus just mainly on the dormitory style building. We gave that direction to the architect. We then went and visited with him the Maya Comet housing they have out the golf course, and went through you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, what we'd like to see, and that type of thing. They came back with an estimate that was more in line with what we believe to be I think is more realistic, hopefully. And again, so Jamie has submitted the updated request, which is about $1.2 million less than what we previously requested. And you should have that, I believe. I apologize, it was a little late because we got it late from our consultant. But you can see it's a 3,560 square foot building, $650 a square foot. We have some additional OPM costs in there that we had some in the first round of requests, but we needed a little extra for the construction phase too. So the new request is now at 3.885. And in the packet, again, I hope you have that. It has the breakdown of everything from the site clearing, excavation, asphalt, crushed gravel, utilities, under drain, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And
Any
it's
other?
it's
Go
a
ahead, Tom.
8 dorm units with one, I'll call efficiency for like a manager type unit.
And Tom, number of bedrooms again?
There's 8 dorm rooms, and then, you know, they'll have common areas. And then there's one mini like efficiency for a manager that would have a self-contained unit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the description in the back there under the numbers where it says building. It's 8 sleeping units, approximately 160 square feet each, 2 shared bathrooms, 200 square feet each, 1 common kitchen, common space living and dining, and then a manager's apartment.
Okay. Any
The,
other comments, Tom?
now we're using Griffin Architects, Ethan Griffin, and he's working with Coastal Engineering on this.
Okay. And then, so that's the printout that I have here. Okay, where would we like to start, members? Christie?
Tom, just a few questions. My first question is, does that efficiency unit, is that included in the 8 or is that separate?
No, it's separate. It's one more unit. It says one manager's apartment at approximately 400 square feet, consisting of bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, and living room area.
And then those 8 units are strictly bedroom?
Yes.
One-
There's
All
single
right.
bedrooms and then there's common kitchen and living areas.
Okay, and then my last question is. What do you feel like you might not be getting with the difference? Is there something that would be missing from this proposal as opposed to the original? With the reduction in the cost?
Well, I think this gives us what we need, and our chairman made a very good observation. He said, this is an immediate and known need we can define. We already have people in what's called the Thompson House. It's not the greatest, it's not year round. We need longer seasonal, so it gives us that. And it also would give us a flexibility if in fact somebody needed housing, even on a year-round basis, we could probably put them in there temporarily. So it may not address if there's a high-level senior position that somebody wants a single family, but what it does do is it gives us the opportunity then to focus on redoing the Thompson House as a single family. And the reason I say that is because that house is it was the door, it was our opening to be able to even do this project, because we had that house on airport property. We got grandfathered in, so that kind of has to stay. We were trying to sell it to get revenue, and they said you can't do that because they wouldn't allow housing there. So it has to stay as an airport house, and eventually we would look probably to do that as a single family.
Yeah, please, Chrissy, go ahead.
Tom, do you have any, you were saying that you could temporarily put someone in there, maybe year round. Do you have any restrictions to do this year round, whether it be the proposal or the construction?
I don't think I understand your question.
Are you able to house people year round?
Not at this time, no. Thompson House is not winterized.
This is for the proposal for the 8 units.
This would give us the ability to house people year round if necessary, yes.
Anyone else?
I got a
Peter?
quick one, Tom. So on the map, the site plan that you gave us, so it looks like there's 2 buildings on this one. I don't know if there's been a quick
That's,
explanation of that.
and
but-
it's just illustrative purposes. We didn't change it just yet, but one of the tasks that Ethan and the group have is to look at a mini master plan. See where now that we're focusing just on the dorm, where would that sit? And then any future, dotted line, if you're gonna do a apartment style or single family, where they may go.
So are either of these 2 that are still included on this illustrative of where the dormitory would be placed, or is it going to be a completely different kind of site plan?
I can't, it's probably gonna be a different site plan.
Okay, got the reoriented parking, all that.
Yeah, I'd asked for a sketch for this meeting, but they're unable to give it to me at this time. They're
Nope.
trying to lay it out a little better.
No problem, just kind of, just confirm which, if it was still, if this one was still current. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Joe?
so with that, you are still planning to keep this driveway on Nobody or Front Road?
Again, Joe, I don't know. That's
Okay.
what we tasked Ethan with. We gave him your comments. We thought there were some very good comments provided by this committee before. And we presented them to the design group. And that was part of what the input was for this, what I'll call mini master plan that they're also going to be looking at.
Do we know when the mini master plan is gonna be?
I'd have to ask if they have it, hopefully within the next week or so, we'd have some kind of sketch of what it may look like.
Peter?
And just curious, moving to dormitory style housing, which is, kind of hard to fit in some zoning. Have you gotten an opinion of the ability to do dormitory housing in here, or would it require
Yes.
special permit or anything like that?
We did get an opinion, and I don't think it was a special permit. I think it's included in the type zoning we have there, because it's,
Allowable by right?
what's it called? Commercial, residential, something like that.
And I guess just lastly, so if we move forward with recommending the 3.2 for this, 3.8 for this. And let's say that then the plans change again and you guys decide maybe not dormitory, you know, maybe we do want to pursue duplex or some other style of housing. Does that come back to this committee to review again, even if we approve the allocation today, or is that at some other committee or at their kind of?
I think we would have to come back through the process again.
And if the numbers are all the same and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the assumption I think would be that we will move forward with the dormitory, and then if we, you know, subsequently need the townhouses or whatever it is, condos, you know, we would come back and look for a supplemental and go through the whole process again.
Just for some reason, the dormitory, you know, it turned out a month from now that maybe that's not the best route to go. Maybe you did want to do it the original way or something like that.
Our commission has agreed that the dormitory is the way to go right now.
Yeah, so we probably wouldn't see any changes like that. Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, so just on that topic, technically, you know, general person's agreement aside for the moment, it will depend on the wording of the article appropriation.
Yeah.
So if it's a broad cover, if it's not specifically for dormitory structure, then it would be coming back to us as a new request. Otherwise, it's an appropriation, I would presume, more generally for housing. Is that correct?
It most likely will be written as an appropriation for housing, which
Yeah.
is the way we've typically done that.
Yeah.
Binding it.
So it would be on a general person's agreement.
Yep, got it.
Tom, I've got a few questions. First, I just want to acknowledge and thank you guys for the October 4th letter. The excerpt from the FAA compliance manual with respect to expensing revenues and operating costs and so on and so forth, and some of the rules that relate to what can be done with or cannot be done with respect to residential use of airport property. I have a couple quick questions on those and some of the other materials you provided. With respect to unlawful revenue diversion, I presume that operating costs include housing as is standard for any business. Well, why don't we leave it at that? We'll just do one at a time. These aren't gotcha questions. I just need to fill out my understanding.
I don't understand what the question is.
Okay, I'll repeat it. I presume that operating costs include costs for bona fide costs for employee housing. As with any business.
Not typically under FAA. If you read in the detail there's some very specific exclusions. And they typically do not allow any housing. We did receive a special approval for this.
Tom, I'm going to back you up on that. I did read through it very carefully, and the housing exception is for having housing on the site, on the airport property. So I understand the exclusion you received and generally the basis for it. What I'm asking is the housing costs, employee costs are an operating cost. Traditionally, housing costs of employees are provided by the employer are an operating cost, as are such things as leasing costs. So I wanted to confirm that is correct.
In this case, yes.
Okay, thank you. The other item I wanted to confirm was that the town of Nantucket is the sponsor, or is that someone else?
That's correct.
Okay. Other than that, I think this document points out that the use of, and I think you can confirm based on your prior statements, the use of any airport land for residential purposes is highly restricted, except for very rare exception, which are difficult to receive. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's that. I'm looking at the site plan and I'm concerned. Nothing new here. I'm concerned about the fact that we don't have a master plan. The lot area that this small area of development is a portion of, this tract of land is all airport property, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So for me, the concern is, okay, that's one of them. I'll get back to that in a moment. You mentioned OPM costs are increasing and, that is in addition to the 1.15 million that was previously appropriated or out of the 1.15 previously appropriated.
There was a portion of the 1.15, I don't know the exact number, that was affiliated with OPM. Once we got these construction costs, I took an 18% and applied that. We're still working to negotiate with the OPM. So that was the difference between what was in the initial appropriation and the estimate that I'm using to negotiate with them.
Okay, so just to be clear, in short, it's the increase is not covered in the original appropriation, but it would be covered in the number 2 request.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that sounds good. I got my questions answered. Do you guys want to have any discussion on deliberation for this?
I just have one.
Yeah, please, Richard.
Tom, have you established what the monthly charges will be for the folks that live here?
No, we haven't. That's a separate track we're going on. And we would work with, we'd have to put out an RFP for somebody to manage this and then determine all those things. But we're required, I think, to do something along the lines of fair market value. And then it gets into, if you don't, whether it's a tax benefit or whether it's I forget what it's called, but an employee benefit or something. So, but it would have to be very close to fair market value.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom on this one at this time? Okay. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
And again, back to the people who can stay in this housing or rent it or use it, it's just airport staff.
Yes, for this dormitory style, yes.
So what if the town of Nantucket needs a room or something, and maybe the winter, you're
If-
saying that's possible?
If it's related to emergency response at the airport, I would say the answer is yes, based on the FAA approval we got.
So Tom, just to follow up on that, with respect to airport employees, it is specifically emergency service personnel, correct?
Yes, which all of our personnel have a response in emergency, so.
And we can presume that given the kind of tight, stringent approach to the rules that the FAA is taking, that any other development on this property would be similarly restricted?
Yes,
Okay. All right. Christie, and then
Yeah, I do.
Tom, where would maintenance fall under as far as for the building and for the grounds, as well as, is there a designated person that's going to be overseeing this? Who would be overseeing this building?
so our initial discussions, the intention is to get a management group to do that. Similar to what the town has done, I think they either did an RFP, RFQ, talked to Tucker about that. And we would select one of the, groups to do management. I don't think it's in our best interest to have our folks do maintenance and things, because then you get into a bit of a conflict of, well, I got an employee living here and, the other guy works there and who's going to do what. So our discussions have been that we would look to a management firm to do that. Or I'd say firm, so some group.
Barry?
Yeah, so Tom, quick question. Was there any thought ever given to just quickly looking into the house recycling program? To see if that maybe was a little bit more favorable in terms of overall cost for this versus doing new construction?
No, and especially not when we went into the dorm aspect of it. I think we initially looked at some costs of housing and, whether we could pick up and move and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But once it went to the dorm, that discussion was off the table.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So what's the pleasure? Do you guys want to have deliberation on this now to discussion amongst ourselves? We, certainly invite the airport to stick around if any other questions come up, or you're good with the information you received. not to put it on the spot, I just,
Yeah.
you know, this is, you know, they've been here a couple of times. If we're gonna
Mhm.
deliberate, I think it's fair to have that deliberation while they're here. So if they
Mhm.
have questions, but we don't have to get into, you know, more along the lines of if you think it will create questions that you'd want them to answer.
I mean,
Peter.
Tom, while you guys are still here, I'll commend you for, moving towards the dormitory style of housing. I think that was a great switch and, much more appealing than multiple single family units or anything like that.
Okay.
Not much deliberation, but just while there's the.
Richard?
I would echo that sentiment. Thank you, Tom, for being responsive.
Thank you,
Good.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Chairman?
Our chairman has, yeah.
Art, go ahead. Welcome.
Thank
to the
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Arthur Gasparo, I'm Chairman of the Airport Commission. Before you head into deliberations, I just wanted to quickly address the committee and thank you for your review, of this project and the multiple meetings and the work that you've also put into this. The commission's been working on the housing, project for some years and come back, and it really is a critical project to move forward with. I don't want to rehash or be repetitive or take additional time. Tom, I think, did a great job. One thing that I heard, Mr. Chairman, your concern or potential concern regarding the site plan, and I just wanted to quickly address that. There have been discussions for going on years now at the commission level and with consultants in terms of a layout for an overall subdivision type of thing with several housing units, and how we consider site planning as we build this, as we progress through an overall project. So I wanted to try to address that concern, or at least reassure the committee that this project would happen in a way that was thoughtful in order to facilitate anything that may happen in the future. In other words, that the road would somewhat get stubbed in with required infrastructure to accommodate, perhaps additional future needs, and not to be short-sighted with respect to site planning. And I do envision that it likely would come in from Nobodere Farm, as has been shown. And the switch from the duplex to the crew quarters, I think does need some site planning that we will have in the works and look carefully at. But I did want to try to offer some reassurance that we will be looking closely at that, and of course, with thoughts to how the rest of the property that may be used in the future as well. I'm available if you had any other questions or specific concerns. Again, I don't want to take any additional time, but to express thanks to you, and also the real need for the airport to move forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. We appreciate that. I just want to point out, just with respect to our process, typically we don't handle these type of deliberations along the lines of, say, the planning board, where the planning board is a regulatory authority, will review the information and then discuss the matter with the applicant right there. Typically, our process is a little bit different because of the nature of how we process information, and we rank these requests, which is through our ranking of relative importance. And we tend to, if there are questions or concerns, bring them up at the time that we review the RORIs as a group. I think in deference to the Airport Commission, the importance of the project, I'm going to state my concerns, because I don't want anyone to think that y'all don't have a chance to be involved, because I don't know specifically when in our agenda next week we'll get into, if at all, discussion on this topic again when we review the RORIs. We do a line-by-line item of the RORIs, not unlike town meeting. Any that a person would like to discuss or have comments on gets pulled, and then we go through and we can deliberate a little bit more. So in the interest of being fair and even and upfront and consistent with my prior comments, my concerns are not having a site plan, a master site plan. And again, Art, I acknowledge your comments. But they're not so much just having a site plan. It is, so we have an understanding of the direction. It's in concert with the fact that this is part of a very large tract of land that's owned by the airport. There are severe restrictions on its use. And in addition to that, there are severe restrictions on the airport with respect to how it implements work, resulting in incredibly escalated costs. We're looking at approximately $420,000 per bedroom for an 8-unit and an efficiency. It'll be a little bit less if you factor in, if you go off the 8 units and the efficiency, probably closer to 400. That's in addition to 1.15 sunk costs on the soft costs. Sorry about that. So the site plan in concert with restrictions on use, the restrictions on the airport with respect to cost, but also with respect to the housing development model. And what I mean by that is these factors in my mind coalesce around that this is not necessarily the best method of housing development, anticipating the airport will need additional housing in the future. Anticipating this land is tied up otherwise. It's attractive land that might be utilized for housing to good effect based upon other development trends in the area. I'm not suggesting this to hold up this project, but I think it would benefit the community if there was a really close analysis of a comprehensive analysis, including the land ownership and tenancy. And I'm not suggesting this is a solution, but I think this is worth looking at. Is, there is, my understanding, having researched this, precedent for the sponsor to purchase airport land, the airport to retain those revenues for its operating and other capital costs. In such an instance, whether it's a portion of this or the whole, that revenue could be utilized for the airport to purchase other town property that is more advantageous to its needs, and or to pay for expenses. One of those expenses could be a 99-year lease for a dormitory and future development of a single-family home. The town's price points are not dramatically better, but they certainly are better. More so if the cost is farmed out as a performance package to a subcontractor. And I'm very hesitant. And if I didn't say it before, I make these comments and that specific example, kind of a straw concept, not to weight the discussion one way or the other in the future, but just so it's transparent to you all what my thoughts are if you aren't going to be present when we deliberate this in the future. Those are my comments on that.
Mr. Chair,
So-
may I respond to that?
Yeah, Tom. Yeah, you can. Go
But
ahead.
just briefly, I just want to give you a little more background. We, at least 5 years ago, began this discussion with FAA where they came and they looked at various alternatives of the use of the land and how it could be done. And they came up with 5 or 6 alternatives. And then at that time told us that the best way to do it was to do a lease back to the town of the property. And we went through that exercise for multiple years and got to a point where there was no movement, and our attorney finally was dealing with the Washington attorney and FAA. And that's where we got the approval for this project. So those, to your point about, the sponsor and the use of land and so on and so forth, that has been evaluated. We could not just get the money and go buy a house somewhere else with that money. So I just want to let you know that was hashed through, if you will, through FAA. There are other departments in the federal government that looked at this as well. But that was part of that exercise. Just want to let you know.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. I think not to go back and forth, but clearly that we've had the housing crisis, since I got involved in community service with the promoting and establishing the housing need covenant back in the nineties. But I would think it's fair to say that there's been more advancement in acknowledgement of the housing crisis and action in the last couple of years in some regards than over many of the years past. So the fact that this was reviewed 5 or 6 years ago, I understand. I think that taken in a different perspective, we have a select board person who was elected purely on open. That was one of that was the primary plank. So I think that there may be some, I know I can't speak for them, but I think that the community appetite is changed and perhaps the political environment. And in addition to that, I don't want to mix and muddle these concepts of what the property can be used for. If it's not owned by the airport, and not to suggest that the airport would not receive, fair market value for other legitimate purposes, the FAA requirements don't come into play. And lastly, when you mentioned the FAA told you what you could or couldn't do, I understand the regimen you work under. But I think one of our presidents once said, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help. And that's not, we're looking at a local control type of a process. And I think your comment about the FAA makes my point that if this land were subject to airport commission control, the airport administrative controls put into play as a resource that the airport could still lease out of, that we would have the local control that could make a tremendous difference. Jill?
I thought that the town did own the land, but the FAA governed the land. Those sort of.
Tom, you can answer that. My understanding is it's owned by the airport. The sponsor is the town, and the ownership by the airport makes it subject to FAA controls.
But
Christie, after Tom.
It's known as federally obligated land. All of the airport is federally obligated land based on grant assurances and things that we received from FAA over the years.
Okay, thank you. Christie?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the FAA did give us local control. They gave us the approval, but I think locally, I think the airport commission and the airport I believe they are doing the due diligence with locally controlling the project, planning it, designing it. It's just my opinion.
Sure.
But they did listen to us on our first few meetings. I think I do think they've done their due diligence, and I think they're responsible. It's like, the project is a lot more desirable to me after this meeting, with what they've come back with. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, thanks. Jill, did you want to come?
Yeah, I mean, my concerns all along was that TSA couldn't use these, couldn't use the property, and that the driveway is on Belvedere Farm Road. And so that hasn't changed for me. So I don't think my position's changed, but I really appreciate that you went to the door model and you're not saying, hey, we're gonna build 10 houses. I mean, I really appreciate that. So I like that. I think there's something to be worked with here, but I think for me personally, I mean, like Steve said, we don't have a site plan. And does this definitely go to the planning board before?
Not if it's by right.
It doesn't have to go to the
Yeah.
planning board. So I know, Tom, you'd said we can't really weigh in on that and it's not our purview, but I feel like because planning board doesn't get to weigh in on it, we should be able to at least voice our concerns about that road. I was on this morning and I waited 30 minutes on that. Just this morning. Are we December yet?
Doesn't make a difference.
It's shocking. It's shocking. It's a very dangerous road. I don't like it.
Okay, thank you, Jill. I just want to clarify, I don't question the level of diligence that the airport and the commission, the administrative staff and the commission have put into the specifics of the project itself. My concerns are with respect to this is, basically, I haven't really studied it, but 1/10 of a portion of a lot that has severe FAA restrictions. If future housing were developed there based on those restrictions, The airport would, in a sense, I'm not, being flippant here, would have to create work. In order for to have the people to fill the housing, because it's restricted to the people who can utilize it. And again, we're talking about 1/10, maybe it's an eighth, maybe it's a fifth, I'm not sure. The point isn't the percentage, the point is the order of magnitude of the ground being developed. Versus the overall lot, the restrictions on the lot, which caused me to point out, and just for the purpose of clarifying. I think a more than reasonable concern about the housing development model. As relates to the land ownership and future tenancies. Tom, I presume that if you all were to develop, I don't know, in some alternate universe, the town worked out that some of this land and the FAA, it would require FAA approval to lease housing on the land to another entity, for instance, the town. But from what you've stated, that would be prohibited.
To lease the land would require a land release from FAA. But to lease let's say a unit in here or something. My understanding of the agreement we have with FAA is as long as they have a response to emergencies at the airport, we could do that.
So then just to follow through on that, just briefly, if you all lease the land, I mean, this is gonna sound like what's the game where you move you put the point under the cups?
Oh,
Your
yes.
card money.
Yeah, but if you all were to lease the land to the town under a lease release by the FAA, does the FAA burden the land with the same restrictions as it has if you own it?
Yes, because again, the town's a sponsor.
Right, so the only way that land could be utilized more for housing, even for airport staff, is if it were, and I'm not suggesting this happened, but is if some or portion of it were released, sold to the town. Correct?
Possibly, I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And I'm not driving for a solution. Again,
No,
this
but
is all,
I'm
this is
sorry,
all
let
the
me-
backdrop of.
Yeah, let me
of
back
master
up.
plan.
I want to
Yeah.
back up a minute because the FAA would not allow the sale of it for development of residential property. They won't release airport land for development of residential because of non-compatible land use with the airport.
Right, but that's kind of a misnomer, right? I mean, there's housing development all around that area. Very
But that's-
dense, by the way.
And that's why they try to exert their control. They have no local control outside the fence, as they call it. But they try to use whatever they can to reduce any encroachment into the area of the airport with residential use.
And can you point to a precedent where it's documented that after that the FAA would stipulate a deed restriction in the sale? Is that what you're suggesting?
They either could deny the sale, again, it's obligated land. They have to give the approval. And
Right,
if you
but
read
is
the
there,
compliance manual, it's in there, I believe, so. I don't have the exact case law, I could talk to our attorneys, I'm sure there's probably many of them out there.
okay, but as you said previously, there was a, excuse me. There was a FAA backing of a lease back to the town 5 or 6 years ago, but that fell into that wasn't pursued for whatever
Well,
reason.
it was what the airports division of FAA determined was the best method to do it. As it went up the chain to legal in Washington, they indicated that that was not necessary and it was strictly an airport issue and it was aeronautical for us to develop.
I'm sorry, could you explain what you mean by that? I thought that you earlier stated or implied that the deal didn't proceed because of lack of pursuit on the town's behalf. Did I misunderstand you?
No, that was not correct. The FAA, a division of the FAA, the airports division, thought that the best mechanism to release the land was a lease back to the town. the FAA's attorney made a decision that that was not the way to go, that it was simply an airport development project, and they consider it aeronautical development as opposed to non-aeronautical. And they said you can proceed with it under that description.
Okay, so I have one more question and then we're gonna pass it to Barry. It's your position that, based on your experience, that the airport would not release any of this property for sale to the town or another party if, there were to be housing on the land, despite there being other housing developments immediately adjacent and closer to the airport?
The only correction is the FAA would not release the land.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. They would not release it. Okay, thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. That's helpful. Barry?
Thank you. Tom, quick question for you. Would the FAA ever be amenable toward doing a one-to-one land swap? With things?
I don't know the answer to that, and I think it depends on where it is and for what purpose and what use, because what comes to mind, Barry, I remember years ago, there was a big piece of property out in Matticat that FAA owned.
Yeah.
And we were saying, look, why don't you do some kind of agreement with us because we need mitigation, et cetera, et cetera. It just never happened, but. So I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to check.
You know, just given where it is, what the potentials are for it, and you know, I look at it from a standpoint of what, since it's not right on airport property, what value does the FAA associate to that? And like I said, if it's strictly, you know, to comply with the rules and regulations of what they're doing at this point, can you indeed do a land swap to something that's proximal within reason? And still maintain the FAA restrictions that they want to do, but free up that parcel of land and see if there's interest in doing something with it.
Technically, it is on airport property. And
Wow.
it's part of
Yeah.
the Delta Fields.
Right. Okay.
Delta sold it to the town, and there's encumbrances and grants and so on and so forth way back, so.
Thank you, Barry.
Yeah,
I think that's an interesting, it actually goes along,
makes me-
Tom, I got another question for you. When I earlier said, or a land swap or purchase other property, I was thinking in my mind, isn't the property between, the corner of Milestone and, Industry Road, a town parcel?
That's airport.
Okay, because in the GIS data and in the assessor's data, it lists it as the owner's town of Nantucket.
So, and that's part of an effort we're doing right now, and as Andrew says, GIS says, stands for Get It Surveyed. There are different parcels that make up the airport that are either listed as Town of Nantucket or Airport Commission. It's all federally obligated under what's known as Exhibit A in FAA parlance, if you will. And we're working with our consultant and town and Andrew to get all of those things cleaned up. Because it's just like anything else on the GIS, it's not 100% accurate. So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Because in that alternate universe that I was thinking of, that was the land easy to, it basically would be a land swap, but in the form of a purchase. But if it's already owned or obligated, to the airport, then it can't be done.
I would not rule it out if, let's say the airport commission wanted to sell that to the town, to whomever, for development other than residential. I don't think FAA would, I think they would approve something like that.
Ooh, I got a good idea.
Sounds
And when you say other than residential, you're not referring to commercial residential versus
No, just
private
some
residential.
right.
You're talking about housing.
industrial or whatever, compatible land use around the airport.
Okay. Okay, well, this is very helpful information. Thank you. Jill?
I want to make sure I understand all that, what you two were getting at. I mean, I don't expect the airport to solve our affordable housing problem on Nantucket. And I don't feel that way at all. And he does have his own crisis
I
that he's
understand.
trying to address, so I get that, so I'm just trying to understand, I think, maybe wait.
I don't think either of us said that the airport is gonna solve the affordable housing crisis.
No, it,
Go ahead, Barry.
it, what, I mean, looking at it from the planning board perspective, which I've kind of grown used to, it's highest and best use of what the land can do.
Right,
Okay. And if there's a high, again, this whole thing about federally obligated land makes that a challenge.
yeah,
So from my rather naive view of understanding that, I'm still back to, is there that opportunity to be able to do something better and trade off another parcel of land in its equivalency to make that happen? So, but can I digress for a minute?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Tom, let me ask you a question, Tom, because I think going back to kind of what Jill said about deriving a master plan, I'm gonna pull back and go up a bit. How long would you anticipate it taking to clear up all these parcels of land under GIS and begin to make sense of what that looks like in terms of what the town owns, federally obligated, because I heard there's some confusion over that, and I'm thinking if we could get a real accurate handle on that once and for all.
Yeah, we have a project underway. It's probably under, the effort started probably about 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
And our consultant is going through and they've been down to the town clerk's office and everything. They're
Yep.
going through each and every parcel, and identifying, what the inaccuracies are, and then we'll work up toward a plan to correct those.
So do you see any of is it just a correction with GIS, or do you see where you may have to go to a town meeting to get authorization to change whatever zoning or aspects are associated with that?
I think it's a simple name change, if you will, or something of that.
Okay.
But,
So,
and I'm gonna rely on like an Andrew to guide us through that process.
yeah, no, and so when do you anticipate that kind of coming together, if you don't mind me asking?
I have to ask the consultant when but I would guess within the next, I would hope maybe 3 months or so.
Okay, I'm not trying to rush you. I mean, it's better for due diligence always. But that kind of just helps me put some time frames on things. Thanks.
Christie?
I was just gonna mention that, whatever, if you did a land swap, if something is gonna go in that area, then the traffic issue is still present. So,
no, I don't.
and I mean, we have Parks and Rec putting in new fields next door and traffic never came up. So we just have to think about
Yeah, traffic.
where are
is
we picking
bad.
our, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bigger problem.
I mean, it's that whole road will probably eventually be developed to some extent.
Yeah.
So I think we have to trust road and ways are gonna do something with the road or planning and, so I think that we're still
They
looking
don't get
at.
to weigh in on it is my problem.
Right,
Yeah.
To
at
help-
this,
To help them make a good
And-
decision.
Yeah, and I think about, legacy, 20 years later, 15 or 10 years later, like, I think this is a good sound decision,
yeah,
So that's, I hear everything you guys are saying, but I think we're reading into this a lot.
Well, yes and no. Barry, go ahead, and then I'm gonna try.
no,
to
go ahead.
close this
I'll
up.
let you go first.
I just think a couple quick things. One, yes, I affirm we don't anticipate nor would it be fair to think the airport could solve, in any way, shape or form, the town's housing crisis. And yes,
I agree.
they have their own housing to look out for. The concerns that I have are twofold, just to briefly restate them. One is a master plan. So we understand the significance of this small portion of the lot relative to the big portion,
Mhm.
relative to the housing development model, to determine whether this is the best way for capital program to recommend an expenditure of funds for housing.
Mhm.
If there's a different, better way, I think it's worth talking about.
Mhm.
Even if there were a slight delay, because this sets a precedent for a very large portion of that lot. I presume, I don't know, we don't have a master plan. That's on the master plan. On the roadways, Christie, I understand, yeah, I think, as a look back. You always want to be on Nantucket in particular. if you know you're gonna have a need, spend the money because you're gonna make it back in rent or you're gonna make it back in terms of appreciation. And you're gonna have the utility of the asset. So there's no question about that. But without a master plan to have regulatory process and review, we end up in situations where we make decisions as a community kind of piecemeal. And we end up with bad decisions in retrospect.
Mhm.
And in particular, that would translate to the inundation, regular inundation of traffic on that road and in that area,
Mhm.
when an alternative may have more simply been put into effect by virtue of a master plan and redirecting traffic to Milestone. I'm not suggesting these or stating these to refute any point that anyone's making.
Right.
I'm just trying to be clear in what it is I'm trying to say.
See, Mr. Chairman,
And yeah, go ahead.
Art had his hand up for a while, so.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I didn't see it.
Art, please go ahead.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I in no way wanted to interrupt. I just wanted to offer that the airport commission and staff has spent years in terms of not having a full master plan. There is a master plan for the airport, and then specific to the housing. I think you're all spot on in terms of, you know, looking at all of the land and, you know, but we can chase our tail here a bit and following along with, you know, exactly what you're saying. I think that's very much why this piece of development is being proposed tucked into the southwest corner of that overall parcel, if you will. It preserves everything else and then also moves this need, you know, forward. It's immediately adjacent to existing dense residential development. It's adjacent to existing infrastructure services in terms of sewer and water. You know, I'm also the chair of the Traffic Safety Committee, a work group, excuse me. I couldn't agree more with, you know, sort of, you know, some concerns that exist around town and island wide with the growth. But at the same time, I would offer that, you know, this is in terms of all airport, you know, properties and locations that which we have looked at, this is what really makes a lot of sense. I would bring you back to the need in terms of that this being utilized as crew quarters for, you know, seasonal employees. What hasn't really maybe been put forward is that you know, the airport staff, you know, and those of us involved really understand it, but to make sure that it's out there, you know, the airport relies on seasonal staff to operate that ramp. And, you know, that's a real need, and the housing situation that they're in right now, while it works, you know, I, for one, as you know, don't expect to be over there for just a volunteer for a period of time, but looking at the long-term sustainability of the airport operation, I believe this is a very important capital project, and that we have done our due diligence, and that's why we're putting it where we're putting it. And it provides, you know, close access for those employees to jump on a bike and come over to the airport as well. You know, most of the folks that are going to be living in those units don't typically have vehicles. I know I've seen for years them walking along Monahanset Road, coming back from the other, you know, the housing that they're in now. There are a lot of good reasons to, you know, advance this project. I fully understand, you know, the concerns and the comments, but I would really urge and hope that you could find support for this project as it has been thought out, and your overall master planning and work on the land. It's all continuing. But for this piece tucked right where it's going to go, for the immediate need to put long-term seasonal employees, the airport's going to need those seasonal employees going forward as a part of this operation, I think, indefinitely. And so I really hope that we could move it forward. And I wanted to just sort of hopefully reassure the committee that we have been, you know, this wasn't something that just kind of came up. It's been looked at and considered, and there's a lot of other factors there related to infrastructure and that sort of thing. So I won't belabor the point, but again, thank you.
All right, thank you. That's helpful, Barry, and then we're gonna.
Yeah, that's okay. So real quickly, make no mistake, not everything has to go onto No Deer Farm Road. Make no mistake about that, you know, especially if the parcel becomes something else. I mean, already I start looking at this project And the first question becomes, well, why not run a longer path and shunt through the driveway by the Delta Fields?
So
You know,
housing-
If indeed this is gonna be airport and it's all connected, you know, the other thing that starts coming to mind is, all right, well, why don't we put in easements for walking paths there as well
Yeah.
too?
Exactly.
And if, you know, if they feel like they're gonna walk, maybe it's a walk down a pathway to a security gate. And guess what? We're eliminating the idea of, 8 vehicles running back and forth. Maybe it's a shuttle bus thing. I don't know, but I think there's potentials there, and it goes back to this concept of what does it look like in terms of No Beer Farm Road? And so I just want to offer that, again, this goes back to your point of a master plan and looking at what other potentials have we not really looked at here. This isn't the only project that will ever come before the town too, that it doesn't go before the planning board. Point in case, Bartlett Farm. Because they're agriculture out there, they got an exemption, and that was,
Mhm.
it's what you see today, but it never went through the planning board.
Hmm.
So there are more instances where that can occur at as well too, just to give you, for instance, though.
Well, I know that there are plans to redo the Delta Fields
Yeah,
as well, so
right.
there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So I mean, not to throw a monkey wrench into things at this point, but here we are coming up on looking at doing something. And I hear what you're saying is that I'd rather try to look at it so that we're not looking back 6-8 years from now saying we really didn't look at it on that holistic basis of all these potentials that could arise out of it.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. And the other thing that it's not just the 6 or 8 years looking back and saying, gee, we could have done this differently. It's if there was a different way to do this and it made sense with respect to the housing development, there would be that 6 or 8 year period where the new model could be utilized, and that would geometrically allow us to progress, propel us forward. The other thing I just wanted to say is, Art, I wanted to thank you. My understanding was that this was only emergency services. I didn't understand that could include ramp personnel.
They're all qualified.
Airport
Airport.
or external emergency services.
Yeah.
or
Respond to the airport.
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay, so that's helpful information, that distinction wasn't clear in my mind. Other comments?
Quick general question that won't require any follow-up. If this was completed today, how many year-round employees that would qualify for this housing would be moving into there? In effect, what's the demand for this today, if this was done?
For year round,
Yes.
I don't think there's a year round right now. But the seasonal that we're designing it for,
It would all be seasonal.
well, yeah, we've moved them out of the Thompson house and they're still working. They're trying to find, they stay wherever they can right now. So,
Okay, thank you.
But they
Okay.
wanna
Thompson
make it-
House is not year round. That's why
But they wanna make it year round.
Right.
They wanna make it.
Or like the furniture.
So this, guys, so this basically, Tom, correct us if we're wrong. This is a swap from the existing residence to the new dormitory to free in part for the utility of the housing, but also to free up the Thompson house for potentially a year-round housing scenario.
yes.
Lastly, I just want to say, lest there be any misperceptions. None of the master plan concept is something that we all would be weighing in and saying, gee, we want a bike path there, or this building should be taller or smaller, or, it's not for design elements, in any way, shape, or form. It's just with respect to, the relevancy is with respect to how are the monies being spent, and putting this particular project into context of that. So I just didn't want anyone to think and back home eating popcorn, watching us on the YouTube, that we're looking to get involved in the nuts and bolts of the master plan. High level executive is all I just wanted to be clear that that was our role. I think we've discussed this. We've gotten a lot of really good information from you guys at airport and through your chairman, Art, thank you. And we will be picking this up in our deliberations next week, if there's any further deliberation. With that,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
we will move on to the preliminary and the Rorys. I guess, Sue, are you with us?
I am.
Okay, not to put the plum guy on the spot, but so Barry is not showing up in 47 of the 61 requests that I see. And I've confirmed that he's completed them, but he's not, his information is not being reflected in the capital review report that comes up. So I just wanted to mention that to you. It's not the end of the world. I do need to get it in before this weekend so that I can prep for our meeting on Thursday. I'll give you a for instance. So if there's some problem solving that needs to occur, maintain network infrastructure is one, and replace town computers is two that Barry is not reflected in, versus the townwide document management system where he is. So I think it's a matter of just having the his user profile populate the fields.
And through you to Sue, we've been doing some problem solving anyways, because they actually did complete the Rorys that you gave me. Went back in, started looking at some things, and all of a sudden fields were populated that I had left as, like 0 value.
And is that the ones at the top?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Because
In other,
it said
in
they
other
might
words,
be
there was something I might have assigned a 0 value to in doing it, and all of a sudden it came back and it's like populated at 100%.
Yeah. it's-
Let me interrupt a quick second, because
That'll help me.
I think, so,
I have something to say.
okay, go ahead, Sue.
Before you get too much further in, so I did
Please.
speak.
Yeah,
I spoke with the developer this morning. A couple of things that if you actually go in and run the report now, Barry shows up on every project.
Thank you.
Yeah, he had to, if you want to know the explanation to it, it was basically
He fixed
because
it.
any projects that were already in capital committee review prior to Barry joining the committee, that was why he couldn't see him, and that's why it wasn't showing up on the
Correct.
report. So he has fixed it. He's removed the former member. Same situation, because that member had voted on some of the projects. That's why it was showing in the report. So both of those are now
Boy, that-
fixed. The report looks good. I ran it a little while ago. Barry, to the issue that you were having, he has only been able to replicate it once. It seems to be a little screwy. So he said if it occurs again, certainly please give us a specific example and he will go back in and look.
Yeah, I think what I'm gonna do at this time is start taking either prints or screen snapshots. And then just go back in after about a day or two and see how they start comparing out again.
Are
so,
you talking about continuity A at the top?
High, medium and low.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
They-
if something's high, it's automatically medium and low also. So
Yeah.
if it's 50 for high, it's
Yeah.
automatically medium and
Oh,
100. and
interesting.
low.
It will just do that.
Same with
The others should be-
major and minor or the other one. So
Okay.
if something's major, obviously it's also minor.
Yeah.
So if you go to 50 for major and 100% is minor.
and if efficiency
Okay.
and effectiveness, it'll kick in the,
Those kick into that because mine did fine.
Yeah.
I don't remember doing it last year, but.
Yeah.
and you can print it a PDF and have them, but.
Sure.
Okay, so it sounds like we have resolution on both the berries being mapped and the screwy, which is a technical SQL term for database development work with 100. So I think we're good. If there is, Sue, if you happen to find that what we just discussed is not the case, and there should be reason for me to have any concern, just shoot me an email. Otherwise, where we're headed with this is I will take all that information and turn it into a simpler spreadsheet. And we will review next Thursday Rory's based upon the group average. And we'll set the average and we'll determine which ones we want to pull out to discuss. And then we'll vote up and down so that I can then turn that into a report to send to the select board and the FinCom. Good?
I have just a quick question.
Yeah,
Probably-
please.
Probably should have been asked before we even started, but
You mean today or
Yeah.
5 years ago?
Probably
This year?
before we started, but what, when you guys are scoring, what increments are you using? Are you using ones?
I'm using
tens,
25.
Quarters? Quarters?
Quarters.
I started using,
Just curious. Yeah,
It doesn't matter individually, but that's what I
it
use.
doesn't, but I just was, just for alignment, just was curious to know, what you guys do.
Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was using 10% marks for,
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
you know, 10, 20, 30. yeah.
Okay, I use quarters,
Yeah.
I use quarters,
Yeah.
because I think they're close enough and.
It's funny you should ask, because I used tens. And then I was like, it's so much easier just to press 2 instead of 25.
So you
Or,
use 11s?
so I'll do like 11, or if you see a 50% in there,
Bye-bye.
if you see a 50% in there versus a 55, for me, it's like 50%. It's literally,
But it took you
Six
longer
one,
to
half a
put it
dozen
in there,
other.
going to that 0.
I figured out it took an extra minute and a half over all the
It's interesting,
requests.
because when you have, if you have like a. If you have like a 35 or a 65.
Yeah.
We don't have, for those doing quarters, we don't have that doesn't fall in. You know what I mean? There's a little, it's just this funny difference. And I don't think it would matter or show up on the Rory.
Yeah,
Oh, we wouldn't see it. It's so minimal, but it is this funny difference where, you know.
yeah,
a little gray.
I actually did it online and
Yeah.
it works out to be like less than a 1/10%. Which would be, versus 66 versus 65. It's 0.0001 difference
Mhm.
in the
Bottom line.
overall, yeah. But it's just, this is where we can be subjective. That's the
Right.
beauty of the
Yeah,
system.
yeah.
Okay, so that's where we are, that's where we're going, and that's where we'll be. And with that, let's see if.
Minutes.
I will encourage you all on the report writing work group to. Maybe set up a meeting. Perhaps sooner rather than later, maybe as early as next week. Just to make sure you will be able to. Take a look at the
Yeah, 'cause I-
appendix.
Yeah, I have no idea when I'm really meant to kick in.
Yeah, so-
To meet sooner than later.
What I'd suggest is 2-part, and I think it's worthwhile for the rest of the group to understand what's going on. So give me indulge me for a minute on this. I would suggest go to the Rory's, go to the reports at the top. Download the appendix A and B. Take a quick look at them. They're nothing new, but just the database version versus the last year's report. Take a look at the schedule we have if you need it. Sue, would you be so kind as to distribute at your convenience a copy of our current schedule to the members via email? You guys take a look at the schedule, see what our deliverables are, and then you can have a meeting respective with your own duties in mind and kind of work out some details. And I'm happy to be involved if you need me to be. And I'm, with respect to content, you and I need to do, we need to schedule our time to come up with that. So we can either do it at that meeting or we can do it individually. Okay,
Whatever works for you.
Brian?
Just to let you know, Mr. Chairman, there's going to be one last request for you to review coming next week, because we, through the transportation planner, have been told that we're in the running for a grant for the Wawinet Road bike path.
Nice.
But we would
Third year
need
running.
the funding in
huge.
place
Yeah.
in order to be able to
Yeah.
pull that all together. So,
Prescient, I actually roried that already this.
we'll
last
be,
week.
we'll be
Wow.
updating the information. So Patrick's gonna be forwarding that to us, correct?
Yes, he's getting me the information today.
So that we
Okay.
can put that in and then send it to everybody, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
No, I appreciate that. And Brian, what's
You
the,
don't like bikes?
hey guys, what's the order of magnitude of the cost
Because these questions.
and the grant?
The grant is about,
Good thing
is
it's
it
been
$1 million, I think, is that correct,
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
And the order of magnitude is somewhere between 3 and 4 million for the total project.
So the grant is for a quarter or a
33
half,
or
a third.
a
rather.
third or
Okay.
a quarter of it. yeah.
Okay, no, just for our,
Yeah.
okay. So that's the report writing work group. That's for the agenda next week. And Peter, do you want to comment or?
Nope, I'm good, sorry.
green sheets, nothing going on at the, NPDC we want to know about?
Nothing I can think about,
Okay.
in particular.
No, I'm just looking at green sheet committee reports. And
You're
you're,
not on this
and
level.
FinCom, have you guys started to meet yet?
Now we meet next week.
Okay, so,
I don't even.
Christie?
Should we be looking at a list of requests about discussion items for next
Yeah,
week?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
to next week. And yeah, good question, because I'm just so used to this, but next week is our opportunity to discuss requests and finalize our rankings. So it'll be next week or forever hold your peace. We can make changes if there's a material, just to be clear, if there's a material change in a request, we can make a change before we issue our report. It's not locked in stone. Date of next meeting is Thursday, December 8th at 10 a.m.
Probably be a long one, right?
Pardon me?
Probably be a long one.
Yeah, I would plan for at least a couple hours, just in case. And if not, you've got some free time.
What was the date of next meeting?
The 8th.
Okay. Do you think there's gonna be one meeting or two meetings for our deliberations?
I think it's gonna be one, because we don't have time for two.
Okay.
I'm not gonna have some big long list.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm good.
Sometimes
Sometimes-
one item will take
Half
45
hour,
minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we
that's the hard part.
Oh, we spent almost, 45 minutes with the report. So,
Don't talk about those
Should we
colors.
do the airport request before next meeting? Because I didn't do it going before. the-
yeah, okay, so let's do housekeeping. Please do the airport request before next meeting. We will, if the airport gets pulled, the Nobadir, we will, if airport is still here,
You say pulled?
if somebody wants to talk about it,
Let's go.
we'll schedule airport. When we get to the portion of the meeting that we're going to discuss individual requests, we will just, if airport gets, any of the airports come up, we will discuss them first.
That sounds good.
Because I think that's, they've been here, they've been,
Yeah.
it just seems simple.
Yeah.
The simple and appropriate way to proceed. Richard?
Is there a select board, FinCom, Capcom meeting? Next week?
We're giving the select board an update, and Capcom and FinCom are certainly free to log in and join the meeting.
We're invited, but we're not
We're-
participating.
It's myself and Sue giving an update to the board and a
Yep.
PowerPoint of the status and the progress.
I was gonna say Rick, but he's
I
not
was
doing
gonna
it.
say, yeah. You did the last one, okay.
I was just
Christie.
gonna say, for a lot of these, could we request that our select board candidate be here for next meeting?
I hope Jason will be here for the Rorys,
Okay.
because it's an important part of what
Yeah.
we do, and,
Mhm.
I understand he can't be here, but yeah, I anticipate he'll be here. Okay, how about a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Richard, on your motion?
Aye.
Oh, actually, all in favor?
Hi,
Carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Stephen.
Stephen, you're so busy. You tell me.